If you are planning a trip to Mount Saint Helens National Volcanic Monument, especially with your kids and RV, then this is the video for you. We will discuss some logistics on getting to the park, show you some of the hikes and favorite sites that we saw, and we'll show you where we ended up RV camping. So let's get started. So a little bit real quickly about the logistics of heading to Mount Saint Helens National Monument. You're a couple hours south of Seattle, well, probably actually more a couple hours south of Olympia, and then a couple hours north of Portland. We were actually staying here at kind of Silver Creek, Mossy Rock area. So right over here, oh, here we go, Keenswell State Park. So we were staying over here, and we did that as a midpoint because it put us about 40 minutes from getting to Mount Rainier, and it put us about 40 minutes from getting into Mount Saint Helens. So we ended up using this as our base. It was pretty far for both distances, but that is an option, especially if you want to keep the RV parked in one spot and then tour one location and then go down into the other location. When it comes to Mount Saint Helens, you really have, this is your main route to come in, this Highway 504. You can see right here. If you wanted to see the caves, you can come up and take this Highway 503, but this and then wrapping all the way around, you can't even get through this way. So you're literally talking about going all the way up or all the way down and around to get around. So you almost need to stay on the south side of the park if you want to do the caves, and then spend some time and stay somewhere on the west side of the park to come over and do the main stretch right here on 504. While we were here, the video that you're going to see is September of 2020, and so this is during COVID stuff, so the caves were not open, so we really saw no point in heading down to this southern area where we really didn't have enough time to make that work. So we just came through 504. You really start seeing the lahars from the mountain before you're even getting into the actual monument area. But you're also not seeing a lot of other stuff like gas stations and whatnot. So be sure that you're filling up at some of these last stations, because this is a lot of driving. I think, you know, from this point where you're coming in to you're getting all the way up to the Johnson Ridge Observatory is about 30 minutes or so. So it's a bit of a hike to take this road and come all the way up. But we will show you on the video what those lahars look like over here. We'll show you Coldwater Lake because we checked that out on our way out. And then we went all the way up to Johnston Ridge Observatory, and we did the hike into the crater for a while. So we will show you all that in the video. So as you're driving up 504, you can start to see the lahars pictured there behind Greta. This is actually where the mountain erupted, and because it kind of erupted out of the side, it just pushed along all the mud and the debris and the ash and everything else, and it had this giant hot fiery mudslide that just destroyed everything in its path. And so you can see the damage from that even though it's 40 years later. This is also a good time to mention that there's a wonderful National Geographic documentary out there called Surviving the Mount Saint Helens Disaster, and it's actually on Disney Plus if you have a Disney Plus subscription. And this was a great way to introduce the kids to Mount Saint Helens, what the actual volcanic eruption looked like, because they do have video from that, and then they have eyewitness testimonies of people who actually survived it. So this is an excellent way to get your kids excited about seeing Mount Saint Helens. As you continue up the highway, there's an overlook to the left-hand side, so keep your eye out for that right before you get to the bridge. This is the Hofstede Creek Bridge, which is the largest of the 14 bridges that were rebuilt or made after the volcanic blast. And this is, like I said, the largest one. It's pretty phenomenal to see, and there's some other different interpretive signs that tell you about the blast zone and kind of where you are in relation to that and how far it's going to extend. Mount Saint Helens is actually managed by Washington State Parks, so it doesn't quite work like some of the other NPS sites. You can drive up to the Johnson Observatory area
just with your vehicle. I remember we put our hang tag out for our National Parks Pass, but I don't think we actually needed it. If you go to the visitor center, they do have an admission, and for our family of 4, it would have been $15. So it's not really a high cost, but that is for the visitor center, and there's a lot of educational things that are there. Unfortunately, because of COVID, that wasn't open for us. So it does mean that the experience was free. We didn't have to pay for anything, but it also means that we didn't really get to have that experience and go into the visitor center and do all the learning from there that we would have liked to have done. The other thing to note is that they have resources online. So if you want to make this an educational experience, you can download a pre-visit lesson for your kid depending on their age range. And so for the girls' age range, it was using Play-Doh to kind of make tectonic plates and learn how they function with each other. And then there's an actual activity sheet for when you go to the visitor center. And that really is based on things that you're going to see at the visitor center. So we decided not to do that ahead of time, but they do make it free and available, and it can help you work through some of the information before you go. We were here the first week of September in 2020, and as you can see from our video, it was really windy that day. I mean, so windy it almost wasn't enjoyable. We weren't sure we were going to hike it down into the crater to get a closer view or not, because the visitor center was so windy, but it ended up being a little bit better once we started on that hike and started getting a little bit closer down into the crater. We didn't hike all the way in. I think it's like 10 miles if you wanted to hike all the way up into the crater, but we did a couple mile hike, and that seemed to be a good distance. Because of the wind, the ash and all the stuff that's on the inside of the mountain was actually blowing off and making it really kind of cloudy and a lot of particle debris up in the air. So it was COVID. We were wearing masks most of the time, but we were definitely wearing them because we needed to wear them so we could breathe. It was just so bad. But you can see here that ash is just blowing off the mountain when it gets windy like this. But it was a clear day, and as we kept hiking further in towards the crater area, you actually have some protection with the mountains nearby. Lots of information here. You can see a listing with all the people who perished in the eruption back in 1980. And you'll learn about a lot of these people if you watch that documentary that I mentioned, but they've done a lot of great stuff to kind of remember people and educate everybody on volcanic eruptions and what that can mean for a community.
Sort of looks like the end of the world, doesn't it? So that's not smoke from any forest fires, that's ash. It's being blown up by the winds here at Mount Saint Helens. And I just got a break here. I'm on this gorgeous trail coming from the visitor center down. You can see the visitor center up there, and I just hiked this trail down. And as I'm coming down here, I'm really getting some great, absolutely great views here of the mountain. It's almost like it's alive. But as that wind is blowing, that ash is blowing up, has the appearance almost of an angry looking volcano that's ready to explode, which of course it's not, but it does give it a bit of the appearance that you might have experienced on that morning of May 18th, 1980, when Mount St. Helens erupted. Today, just a windy day.
And so this trail that we're on is called the Boundary Trail. If you're walking from the Johnston Observatory area, you can take a paved trail, kind of a ramp area that has some interpretive signs and gives you some information, and you can just walk in that paved area. You can continue the trail and it will go on a further distance, kind of up along here, and then you can walk back to the parking lot and wrap around and get to the parking lot on the further north side of the parking lot. So you're kind of heading up from the east side of the parking lot and you end up coming out at the north side. But if you go on the dirt road at the point where the trailhead is for the Boundary Trail, then you can head onto that, and that's what we're taking to work our way towards the crater right now. Because it was so windy, Jeremy actually went ahead to decide whether or not it would be less windy on this trail. And he couldn't call me because we really didn't have cell service once you kind of enter into the boundary for where the where the eruption had been, there's not really much for cell service, but he was able to send a text message from the sat phone, and I received that told us to go ahead and meet up with him. So we were able to do that, and it was definitely a lot less windy as we were heading a little bit closer. About a mile or so into the trail, there was a nice park bench where we could sit and eat our packed lunch that we had brought with us. There's also various interpretive signs along the way that give you information about the eruption and the mountains and all those types of things. We then started working our way back to the car because we wanted to check out Coldwater Lake and wanted to have enough time to do that. You can see the observatory up there at the top of that mountain peak and what the views look like here. This was really the best map that I saw that really gives you an idea of what different things you can see on the various sides of the park. So hopefully you're able to kind of pause this and zoom in and really see what you might want to do. The website is not necessarily the easiest to navigate, so I think this map will be very helpful to you. Wanted to show you some video of the parking lot so you could see that you would be able to park your RV. If you did have to bring your RV with you, you could park in some of these kind of overflow spaces. You can see it's not very busy the day we're here, but again, it was windy and it was in the middle of the week in September, so it's probably a less busy time of year to go. They did have some bathrooms off in the distance here because they didn't have the visitor centers open. They had those available for people. And then the other thing to note is you cannot bring pets here. So just leave the pets back at the RV or back home because they are not able to come on any of the trails. So there's really no point to bringing pets with you. This video is now showing our walk into Coldwater Lake. So there's just a really tiny trail, I mean not very far at all, and then you're able to get over to Coldwater Lake. Coldwater Lake is really cool because you have some different areas where you can hike along these logs and fallen trees and stuff, which was neat. The water wasn't really that deep, at least this time of year, so we could just take off our shoes and walk across to the other side where they have this black sand beach. And it was really neat to see this black sand because of the volcanic rock, of course, that's in this area. And it was a nice place to just cool off, especially after hiking and get our feet all nice and wet. Fishing is allowed in Coldwater Lake if you have a Washington fishing license, of course. You can also boat in here, not motorboats, but like canoes and kayaks and paddle boards and stuff like that. So there's an area where they have a boat launch and you can bring those types of watercraft items with you and enjoy being on the water. In terms of RV camping, we stayed all the way in Silver Creek, kind of Mossy Rock area by Ikinswa State Park, and that was really too far from Mount Saint Helens. I mean, it was like 40 minutes or so, but you also have a lot of driving once you get to Mount Saint Helens, so I wouldn't really recommend that. We needed to do that because we only had so many nights, and I needed a midpoint between Mount Rainier and Mount Saint Helens, and that's why we chose this spot. If you do want to see our review on that, we do have a review just on the Harmony Lakeside RV Park. I hope this review was useful for you in planning your trip to Mount Saint Helens. If it was, please give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe for more information about national parks, campgrounds, RV travel with families, all sorts of good stuff like that. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at RV Homeschool. Thank you so much for watching.